Welcome back to the Becoming Her podcast. Dr. Ann and I are back with a double trouble episode. So Dr. Ann and I thought this would be a really great opportunity to chat about something that we are both so very passionate about and something that we see a lot of our clients struggle with. And it's the concept of identity shifts. And identity shifts are something that 1,000% need to happen if you're ever going to get to a space where you make long-term sustainable change. And this can be in any area of your life, right? Whether that be identity shifts, if it's something in around not just your health and fitness goals, but your professional goals, your spiritual goals, your personal goals. Shifts have to happen. And something I say often is that your identity drives your actions and your actions drive your outcome. And so the way that we talk to ourselves matter, and the way that we, identify with ourselves matter. And so I'm really going to let Dr. Ann steal the show here because she has a lot of really powerful insight here in and around what needs to happen when we're really truly looking to create identity shifts. Because I know it's something that's easy to talk about. It's not so easy to necessarily execute, though.
Yeah, thanks. We were talking earlier, and I get really excited about this topic because it's one of the things that we actually can do to make a really big impact on our life. So when I see people in the office and they come in and they say, I can't eat donuts, or I'm a binge eater, or I'm unable to ever control what I'm doing with food. The problem with this is that once we are saying that, that inherently becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. In other words, what I think about myself to be true winds up being true. And I'm not, and I want to make a difference here. So there is a discrimination between having boundaries and understanding our limits, and then inherently who we are as human beings. And this is where I see people get trapped all the time. Now I'll give them some things to do. I had a patient in my office recently, and we've been working on food and working on not binging, and we were changing up nutrition. And she said, I can't believe it's this easy. And after, and I'm sure, Nicole, do you hear this often?
Yeah, all the time. Yep, I'm just here nodding my head if you can't see me on the recording and you're just listening to this. Yeah.
And after that appointment, within days, she was back to some of the exact old behaviors, doing some of the same old stuff. And when we went over it, she said, what I realized is that it was really scary for me to get to a place that this was actually really complicated. I thought it had to be complicated, like all of the millions of diets that I've, and all the things that I was doing before. Yep. I thought this had to be painful. I thought it had to be really complicated. And I realized that inherently made me feel really overwhelmed and hopeless. And the moment I went there and I thought, oh my gosh, this is easy and it's working, I thought, well, it can't be this simple. And we realized that then what she did from that is that if it can't be this simple, then it has to be harder, and I must be doing it wrong. So I might as well go ahead and just eat like a trash panda. That's my word for it, because I must be doing it wrong anyway. And this is where I'm going to wind up. Right. And so I see so many people that will come in and will say things like, I can't eat donuts, and I can't eat brownies, and I can't have right. Like, I can't eat those foods and be thin. That is a part of the problem. Because once we moralize these foods and we say that these are bad foods or good foods, and I am good or bad for eating them, or I am worthy or unworthy of eating them, then what happens is that food has much more control over us, and our ability to manage ourselves around that food diminishes significantly. Now, this is where I'll say to people, do you go to a grocery store? Do you go to a bakery? Do you eat all the food there? I've said this repeatedly before. You can go when hungry to the grocery store. Are you eating all of the yummy food off of the aisles and out of the bakery section? And they look at me kind of like I have four heads, and they go, well, of course not. And I said, all right, therefore you have self-control. You're just utilizing it differently. Those brownies aren't forcing themselves down your throat. The donuts aren't either. It's what's happening internally that's actually creating that dynamic that you can't actually manage that.
Yep. 1,000%. What I see often, and something that Dr. Ann and I were talking about off camera, was that when we have clients come in, this is something that they've attempted multiple times. When I say this is something fat loss, right? Getting to a space of, losing the weight, keeping it off is something that they've attempted honestly their entire freaking lives. And we work with so many women who have been in, Weight Watchers since they were 10 years old. This is something they have struggled with their entire life. And so when we come in and we start giving them the things that they need to do to create these habits, and they start to like get into a groove, and we start to find a level of where almost like it quote unquote feels easy. And just like you said, there is a space where all they've known is chaos around this. All they've known is self-sabotage around this. And so when we start to find this group, the easiest way for me to explain it, it's almost like a thermostat, right? You set your thermostat to 72, comfortable 72. The thermostat heats up to 75. What is the thermostat meant to do? It's meant to kick on and cool itself back down to 72. Your identity is almost that same way. You start to see progress, you start to get hot, as I like to say it, and then the thermostat kicks on and then it wants to pull you back down, because regardless if we want to believe it or not, the chaos and drama around it it's all that you've ever known. So it's comfortable. As much as you don't want it to be comfortable, it's comfortable having an experience to the chaos and drama that comes with forever fat loss, and that comes with losing the weight. And so we have to really be able to step back, and there's a lot of power to having a coach that can point these things out, right? And sometimes that requires me sticking my coaching hat on and taking a moment to bring in some clarity and some perspective to this. But I really find people, just like the self-sabotage that comes into this when we start to see the progress, is something that's so very common, myself included. This is something I struggled with for years and years and years and years. And it wasn't until my first coach, when I say my first coach, meaning my first real coach, not like Weight Watchers and like Optavia coaches, right? But my first real coach was able to point this out and give me a level of awareness that nobody had ever given to me before. And I truly was the one that was creating the drama in and around it. But because again, it was the chaos around that was something I was so comfortable with. And I refused to admit to myself that it really could be quote unquote easy. Like it really didn't have to suck my soul. It really didn't have to require me giving up absolutely everything that I enjoyed in life, right? And what I see tend to happen is that when people come in and they start working with us, we start giving protocol, as you know, everything we do is custom. We start giving them, their daily goals and their, programming and whatnot. And they start doing the things as, we want them to do, but yet their identity is still being governed by old them. We always say we're working on version 2.0 of yourself. And so even though you're doing the things, but you're doing the things with old identity governing them. And we truly, we have to be able to make this swap, because version 1.0 of you, she gone. And it's great to look back and be able to reflect, because, there's a lot of things that, we're not saying there weren't great things about version 1.0 of you, but if we want to be able to truly master this, 2.0 of you has to come out, and we have to be able to let 1.0 of you go. And so I know I see you shaking your head a lot, but for those that can't see us on the recording, I'm going to let you dive into some of that, because I know that you probably experience a lot of the same things.
Well, one of the things I heard not too long ago was somebody who was struggling with a lot of binge eating, and one of the things they said to me was, it's probably pretty easy for you to talk about this because you're thin and you don't understand what this is like. And I had to stop her there, because I said, well, I've been 60 pounds heavier and I've been 30 pounds thinner than where I am currently. And I've done lots of journeys in my life. And this isn't about me, but I want you to notice that you're really struggling to hear anything that I have to say, because it doesn't already fit into what you think should be in your head and what it is that you want to believe about yourself, that this is impossible for you. And one of the things that I will fight people on, not physically, but we get into some heated conversations and in my office is having treats and eating enough food.
Yep.
So I'll have people and they're doing really great and they feel really wonderful. I'm losing weight. This is really working. You're amazing. And I'm like, how many calories you? Oh, still not enough. And how are those treats coming? And they look at me and they're like, well, I've done great. I haven't had any treats. And I said, no, that's actually not great. That's
Yep.
not what we're going for. That's a diet. And then they'll go and they'll finally go and have something and they'll say, that was insanely good. I can't believe that I could eat that. And it can be triggering sometimes because then maybe they want more, or they want one every single day. And we'll, initially for some people, I start out once a week. You've heard this before. For other people, you can have it every day, but we're going to have it in really small amounts. And as people start incorporating foods that they actually really enjoy with managing protein and managing to get in their plants and their healthy fats and all of this other stuff, right? Like those treats, those they're essential to our life. They're enjoyable, but they're actually, it's really it's all in our heads.
Mm-hmm.
So, what these treats are, they're not bad. They don't make you bad for eating them. They're not shoving themselves down your throat. You're not going to lose control. You don't lose control in the grocery store. You have a capacity to be around them. You do have a capacity to eat them. You just don't realize that you do. And so we have to change these mantras. People, when they come into me, they're like, well, I can't eat that because every single time I eat that, I binge on it. Well, we're going to have to problem solve how not to binge on it, but you can have that.
Can't have that. Yeah.
You are worthy enough. It's not about your weight. It's not about, and a lot of people say, well, I can't have that because I'm fat. People are going to judge me for having that. No one's judging you. You're judging you.
I feel that in my soul. I struggled with that. I feel that deeply.
And I'm going to tell you that what projection is the second we walk into a room and we say that person's thinking something awful about me. I know it because of the way that they just looked at me. Maybe not though. But what we do know for a fact is that that's exactly what you were thinking.
Yep.
And you just put that off on somebody else and you blame them for it and made yourself feel really self-conscious.
Yep.
And I hear people say this all the time. They think I'm stupid. They think I'm too fat. Some people will say they think I'm the fattest person in the room. They think that I shouldn't be up here. That has nothing to do with anybody that's looking at you. That has everything to do with who you are and
Like people get
what's happening
triggered by, and this, and me speaking from my personal experience here, but I feel like people get triggered or comments or people get triggered when it's something that they only, like you said, they only believe themselves. So if somebody says something and it triggers you, there's some sort of belief in there that you feel like that's true almost, right? And so it's like you can only be triggered if there's some sort of, you already hold some sort of belief in that yourself. And that was something that I truly had to work through in my personal journey as well, because it only affected me when there was truth to the statement. And really recognizing that and owning that was, oh, that was huge for me. It was like a light bulb moment when that finally went off for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the phrases I hear a lot is I'm just a binge eater. I can't eat those things. Mm-hmm. And what I'll tell people, we've got to stop doing what we've got to stop doing is we've got to actually stop keeping those ideas about ourselves alive. And so we can change how we say those things. And you can say, I'm not sure how to manage this food yet, but I'm capable of it.
Yep.
All right, now it's become a problem to be solved, and you're not the problem. What it is that I'm doing around the food becomes the issue. And there are so many little steps that we can take to actually increase that ability to maintain that and manage that willpower and actually get that food in. Most of all, can be solid, healthy nutrition and good protein. Secondly of all is our body's response to that food. And how we manage that. But there are so many different little tweaks that we can make to actually get in the foods that we're binging on. So we stop binging on them and we get to eat them like a normal human being.
It's so funny you bring this up. I actually saw a reel just a couple of days ago, and I was going to share it with you and say that we should podcast about this. It was a gal who is currently carnivore. She was either eating tuna or sardines out of a can, and just basically made this bold statement that said, don't let anybody tell you that you can eat whatever you want. Don't let anybody try to convince you it's okay to have these foods in the house. I tried that and I gained 40 pounds from it. And my heart hurts for her because she's spreading so much there's just so much misinformation
Yes.
is the word I'm going for. That, yeah, is the word I'm trying to come up with here. But it's like having somebody who has no background or understanding with nutrition eating pure tuna or sardines or something like that out of a can, basically telling people that there's no enjoyment in food whatsoever. And, you don't have to have the foods in the house that you don't love. And I'm all about, like, if there's a food that's triggering to you, understanding how to maybe have it in, like, if chips are something that triggers you, right? Maybe you don't buy the massive bags that that you're going to sit down and like inhale, all the whole bag. Maybe you buy like little snack size bags. And I'm a
Mhm.
big believer in being able to manage it that way, but to completely say, oh, you should never have is just, it's unrealistic because that's what's going to lead to your binge every single freaking time, right? But yes, that's exactly what it does. But B, is that really a way you want to live life? At the end of the day, do you want to live the rest of your life where food controls you and you don't control it? So basically, you're saying just don't do these things. Let's not get to the root of what's really going on here. Let's just put a band-aid fix and we just won't buy the food. But what happens when you're around those foods and you've restricted for so long that, you go to a friend's house or whatnot? And that again is what leads to said binge. And so it just like it hurt my heart for her because I'm like, here you are literally eating plain tuna out of a can. You can't tell me that this is enjoyable because this is what you think that you need to do to see success. Not what you
Mhm.
really need to do to see success, but what you think because of the preconceived notions, because you won't allow yourself to get down to the root of what's really going on and educate yourself about, how to incorporate these foods, how we eat the foods that we need and combine those with the foods that we love. Because you very much so can. All foods fit. You may not be able to eat the amount of them that you want to eat, but there's no good versus bad. And that's what happens is that people assign emotion to food. In reality, food is just food. There's foods that fuel us differently. Yes. And 85 to 90% of our day should come from single ingredient whole food sources. But when we
Mhm.
assign emotion, we lose our power, right? Like food takes the power, you take the back seat. And at the end of the day, until you're in the driver's seat, you're going to struggle. And you're going to be riding what I reference as the vicious self-sabotaging merry-go-round.
Well, and not, and I want to piggyback this because it isn't even just assigning emotion to food, it's also assigning our worthiness to whether or not we eat that
Mhm.
food, right? And I'll be totally honest about this in my journey. I 100% lived like that, where I thought sometime in my 30s, living life wonderfully, avoiding all of the foods that had ever remotely even triggered me. And I was at my thinnest weight, thought, really buff, really toned, and thought, this is life and I'm really living it. And I feel so free. And then I'd go out with friends or my family and they'd go have pizza. And I'm sitting over here eating my salad. My salad was lovely. It really, really was.
Like, I really
But
like this.
man, that pizza looked so good. And it's so much different when just earlier this week, my son, who's in the Air Force, came home with his wife, lovely, lovely couple, and we all went out for this big, huge family gathering at a restaurant, and pizza and salad and wings and fries
All the
and
good
pretzels.
stuff.
Yeah, and I had a little bit of all of it, and I enjoyed it. And there wasn't any moment in that meal that I was trying to convince myself how much I loved my salad. And while in my head, staring longingly at the pizza and the wings, wishing I could have some,
Yeah.
like I had a little bit of everything, and it was wonderful. And I walked away, and that was it,
Yep.
and nothing else happened. And man, when I say a journey, like, yeah, a real journey for myself, because in the past I could have eaten the whole pizza and had a number of other things and it wouldn't have stopped there.
And that's
And
what we
so,
call balance, right? Like, because like you said, we've both been to the extremes. I've been to the extremes. It's like I eat the whole pizza and then I go in for the fries and I polish it off with the Ben and Jerry's. And I've been to the other extreme of,
yeah.
not going out without being, I've literally been the person that brings my food scales to restaurants and my pack, you know what I mean? Like I've been that person. I've lived that life. And so when you find the balance of the middle, and I feel like balance is such an overused term, but there's just so much power here to being able to understand that it isn't black, it isn't white. You can live in the gray area and you can thrive in the gray area. And you should be looking for the gray area opposed to just the black or the white.
And you're not a bad person because you ate pizza or
Yeah.
ice cream or donuts, or your worthiness didn't suffer because you had a different carbohydrate and fat and protein than what you normally have.
Yeah, I feel that too. I spent some time, about 6 years ago that I was looking to compete. And I think we've chatted about this before, but my worthiness got attached to the person that walked around with veins popping out of my arms, right? And I couldn't go to the grocery store without somebody stopping me and being like, how do I get an upper body like you? And you like bring that in. And it felt really good to get the validation that people notice all this hard work that I was putting in. And so when it came time to not, because you can't walk around stage lean. It's just unrealistic. And when it came time to
Mhm.
reverse out of that, that was probably the biggest mental mind F that I have ever experienced in my entire life, because I had to shift from and learn to cope with not being shredded Nicole anymore. And that Nicole had a lot more to offer than just veins popping out of her arm. But I didn't know how to regulate that. And so it was a really, really, like, when we talk identities, that was the only identity at that point that I knew. And honestly, I convinced myself it was the only thing I ever wanted. I only wanted to be known for, like, in my head, it's like, well, if I have veins popping out of my arms, people know how knowledgeable I am. And then they'll want to work with me. And then, you know what I mean? And these like stories that would just, it was just like blow up in my head. And I just kept reinforcing this like really just vicious like pattern. And it was the biggest challenge going from, and obviously competing is it's an extreme sport, and it's not something that, most people look to do, is to step on a stage. But it was a challenge to have to shift from the girl that no longer, got stopped in the grocery store anymore. And people weren't commenting on my physique, and they weren't giving me the validation that I was worthy, because I needed it from everybody else because I didn't have it myself. Like
Yeah. So
yeah.
what's cool that you're talking about, and I just want to echo on this a little bit, is that you're talking about the difference between an ego boost and true self-confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Because an ego boost is when we get a like on a photo or a comment that we made on social media, we feel good
That
about
dopamine hit.
ourselves, right?
Yep.
It's like, oh, that's wonderful. And people, know that I have something great to say. And true self-confidence is actually an inside job, because when we're just seeking ego boost, and the problem with ego boost is that we need a lot of them to sustain it. So we need constant reassurance that we are worthy. If I go out and nobody notices that how thin I am, or how pretty I am, or how whatever I am, then it means that I'm not doing enough. And it means I need to change this. Or if I show a picture on social media and no one likes it, then I need to take the picture down or the comment down. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what true self-confidence is an ability to internally regulate that based upon who it is that we know that we are, and what it is that we're doing that we're proud of, what we like about what we do. And true self-confidence also involves us being able to identify the things that we don't like that we do as well, or the things that are really hard for us. But again, there's that difference in our worthiness. I feel like I'm a good person because I'm kind, because I'm generous, because I'm hardworking, because I'm disciplined, and I struggle sometimes with donuts or pizza. Do you like those two are very, very separate, but we have to be able to do both to have true self-confidence. And and it's not that ego boosts aren't lovely and they can't feel great, but true self-confidence is going to ride above all of
Yep.
that. And it's going to also make us more stable in how it is that we're managing food. Because if I see myself as someone that's very self-disciplined, and I know that I sometimes struggle with discipline, but more often than not, I do a good job with it, and that I am a self disciplined person. Then what's going to come because of that view of myself is that I'm going to look for opportunities to be disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna show up, and when I see a full pizza in front of me, I might grab just a slice and be done, because I'm a disciplined person versus eating the whole thing.
Yep. I would curious how you work with your patients and really guide them to work through being able to attach your identity to something like being shredded, or, the, I guess, the titles that we want to give ourselves. Cause I remember the first time somebody asked, my mentor asked me, he's like, who is Nicole? And I'm like, well, I'm a mom, and he's like, no, who is Nicole? And Nicole was only attached to all these titles that I gave myself. And it took a lot of therapy and a lot of work for me to really truly figure out who Nicole really is, without
Yes.
the titles and without the veins and without all of those things. So if you could give our listeners any tips and tricks to how would you work through with your clients to really figure that out?
Well, and I want to comment on this. That is actually a really that is very specific to America. And other countries, it's grossly inappropriate to talk about the titles that we perform, and grossly
Mm.
inappropriate to even ask what you do for a living.
Oh, wow.
Um, in other countries, when somebody asks you about yourself, they want to know character-wise who you are as a person.
Yeah.
That I'm generous, I'm kind.
Hmm.
And that is an internal reflection thing. And part of this is that when we learn how to spot what our internal drives are, what it is that our heart wants most. So if I show up at an event at a party, and what my heart wants most is um, my son to have a great birthday, or his wife to have a really good celebration, because I love them and I want them to be happy and I want them to, really enjoy things. then I can reflect on that myself and I can say, well, what does that say about me as a human being? That means that I'm a thoughtful person. I'm really compassionate. I'm very loving, right? And so my behaviors then fall in line with being a compassionate, loving, or thoughtful person. So I might do things in line with that, like pick up flowers on the way to the party, or make sure that I picked out the very special gift, the book that, my daughter-in-law has been wanting for a long time because I happened to ask my daughter about it in advance, right? Like, so I go to all these lengths to reinforce the character of who I am as a human being.
Mhm.
And and that way, when I show up and somebody doesn't like the gift that I have, or they don't like something about the event that happened, or something unfortunate happened, I still can look at myself and go, well, I'm really proud of how I showed up, even though this unfortunate event happened. Or this person is really disappointed in something or really upset about something.
Yep.
Um, and that's what actually self-confidence is. And the idea that we are, an entrepreneur, or we're thin, or we're a mom, or we're a businesswoman, or we're, fill in whatever blank that you want to fill it in. The problem with that is, or beautiful, right? So beauty fades over time,
Yep.
right? Wrinkles come in, and we can fight it for sure. We can do lots of different things and different strategies. But if we identify, if we struggle with hanging on to being a beautiful woman, it's going to be really hard for us to accept how time changes us and how things shift. And, again, we don't have to not fight things. We don't have to work on things. We don't have to just accept it. We can actually do things. And that inherently can be a part of that character drive, that can be a part of that. I'm a self-disciplined person, so I'm working hard to make sure that I'm staying fit, or that I feel good about who I am in my skin. But when we make it about the role that we are in, the wrinkles feel like failure. The 5 pounds feel like failure. The fact
Mm.
that we don't look like we were in our 20s anymore feels like failure. The fact that I can't fit into whatever size I was in back when I was really young feels like a failure, because that's how I saw myself. And that is really, really hard lifelong. And I've seen people in their 50s and 60s and 70s still struggling in those roles, still coming to me crying about the fact that they're getting old or gray hair. And I'm like, it's wonderful. It's beautiful. You've lived another day.
Yeah.
This is really cool. Let's talk about who you are as a person, because that's the thing that we actually have and can control.
It took me a long time to, I remember him when he asked me, like, who is Nicole? It took me a few days to really come up with who I was outside of these titles too, right? And
Yes.
that was eye-opening for me. It was just one of those things I was like, why am I struggling so hard with this? And now when somebody asks like were to ask me who is Nicole, well, I'm tenacious and I'm passionate and I can be slightly stubborn. And I know who I am outside of all of these old existing titles that I gave myself. And there's just been so much power to that. But I wanted to piggyback off of what you were saying as far as, really like leaning into this was I really feel like it comes down to cultivating, because you can believe something, but it's beliefs versus values, right? Because, your thoughts are what you believe to be true, but values are what you believe to be important. And so it comes down to cultivating values that are in alignment with who you are and who you want to become. And it's like, you can believe that you should cut out all carbs and, believe that, XYZ myth or whatever the case may be. But until you cultivate values that are actually in alignment, when life always be lifing, as we know, we always plan that not everything goes to plan. If you don't have values in place, truly like things that, are important to you. And at the end of the day, we all know we prioritize what matters to us. And for so many people, you tend to be at that very bottom of that list, of that priority list, but we do prioritize the things that matter to us. And if you have values that are in alignment with that person that you want to become, in and around your nutrition and around your training and around your, your daily goals and your movement and all of those things, then when life be lifing, those values are there and we prioritize them. It just starts to become who we are instead of what we do to chase XYZ result. And I know that talking about these things can sound cliche and it can sound cheesy, but I shit you not, until you truly are, you can stand firm in those values and they start to again become who you are and what you do without even thinking about it, right? Like things go crazy, things go chaotic. I don't even have a second thought of how I'm going to hit my protein goals for the day. Like it's not even something I put any energy and effort into, because that is a value of mine. Nutrition is a huge value of mine. And there's no second thought process to that anymore. steps, movement, right? Like my whole day can go haywire. And it's like, if I know for a fact, it's like I'm on my walking pattern, it's something I value. It is something that's important to me. And so these things are almost on autopilot. And I feel like for a lot of people, it's just what they do to check a box or because that's what they think they need to do. But then when life gets chaotic and we plan that not things go to plan, those are the first things that go.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the value that you're referencing is one of self-care, but also is embedded in self-discipline, right? So if we realize that I'm not taking care of myself, then all the things that I really pride myself on and all the things that I really like about what I do goes goes haywire. Then we prioritize self-care in order then to be disciplined. So if I realize that if I think of myself last, and that means that I'm just going to eat whatever I can find throughout the day and hope that I meet my goals and hope that I get in good nutrition, and then at the end of the day, I'm eating again like a trash panda, then I haven't prioritized my life. What's interesting is that most of us actually already have values and we don't even realize that we're operating in them or we're operating against them. But one of the telltale signs that we're not living inside of our values is feeling shame about what it is that we're doing. And shame shows up in three separate ways. First way is that we people please everyone around us. The second way is that we withdraw and we don't want to share what we're doing. So when we're like eating in the closet, eating in the car, we're like, we're trying to get everything in, or we're lying when we put things on the app and we're like, yeah, sure, I met this and I'll just go ahead and image this. Or we get really defensive about it.
Mm-hmm.
People that go on social media and they sound really empowered, but they're kind of nasty about, well, this person deserved this. That isn't actually in alignment with their values because they're getting really defensive about it and they're putting that defensiveness out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are really big signs that already you're living outside of your values because you're acting and talking about this in such a way that you are not actually healthy doing this. Because when we're living inside of our values and somebody says, why did you do that? We can speak from the heart and we can say, well, I did that because I realized that this was important to me. I did that because I value being kind. I did that because I value being disciplined. When I'm meal prepping, my coach was talking to me about meal prepping. I was one of those people. I was determined I'm not going to meal prep because this feels really obsessive to me. And then I realized it was just good, solid planning. Like that's all.
That's all it was.
I went from grabbing like a protein bar and a protein drink as I raced out the door to I've got like a fruit bowl with yogurts and little egg bites, that I can like heat up and
Perceptions,
eat.
everything. Yeah.
Oh, huge, right? Instead of like, it's a 30-minute ordeal every morning. And when I started doing that, I felt not only really good about what I was doing in terms of my discipline, but also I was taking care of myself before my day even began, before I started taking care of everybody else in the plan I had to take. And it was game changer, an hour on the
Mm-hmm.
weekend, prepping food,
Set your whole week
max.
up. Yeah. Set your whole
That's
week up
it.
for success. Yep.
And then the rest of the week is, what I typically do, grab and go, except it's grabbing the food that I already know is good for me.
Yep.
Um, and it's just a shift.
Yeah. I'd be curious your thoughts and what you think about this. Do you feel like the values that we talk about, you said most people have these values that are rooted in them. Do you feel like these values can only serve us if our identity is attached to that, like where we need our identity to be, right? Like, I'd be curious your thoughts there.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So, and sometimes our identity, because I've heard people say, I'm not a very thoughtful person, or I'm not really good at, I just don't care. I just don't care what somebody wants for gifts. I don't care what they like. I don't care. I don't care what people think about me. I have never met a person that truly didn't care about what other people thought about them who ever said I didn't care.
Mm,
And the reason I'm saying that is because usually when we have to repeat it over and over again, it's because we're trying to get ourselves to believe it.
convincing ourselves. Yeah.
And sometimes I'll stop people and I'll say, are you trying to convince me or yourself that you don't care? Because obviously you do care because we're still talking about it 10 minutes later.
Yep.
Um, and and it's really interesting because when we can align the fact that maybe something is hard for us, and I hear a lot of people talk about a lot of men that will come in and they don't know how to give gifts, or they grew up poor and they didn't receive a lot of gifts, and they're like, well, I don't care what people want, it's fine, everyone will be fine, I was fine as a kid, it's no big deal. And when you come down to it, it's because they realize that they didn't learn how to spot what other people loved because they never had an ability, nobody trained them how to do that, but it didn't align with their values of being a kind, thoughtful human being.
Got it.
And so we figured out, what were the strategies that you use to figure out what gifts people like. Again, I'm not saying that you're going to like that has to be your number one love language versus like, I get how to make an effort now. I understand why I didn't. And they'll come back and say, wow, I picked up roses. My wife said that she likes purple and I found some purple roses. I don't know where you find purple roses, but good for you. And she was thrilled, or I just got her one. And it's like, it's amazing the shift that makes and
Mm-hmm.
being able to even feel who we are on the inside. The fact that we took that extra 10 minutes, the fact that we were thoughtful that specific way. But a lot of this is skill set driven, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
but again, if I'm telling myself I don't care, if I'm telling myself I'm just bad at this, I'm telling myself I'll never be thin. And I hate the fact that I hear this, I hear this often when people are talking about fitness and health and nutrition. Why are you fat shaming people? That is not what we're talking about. We're not fat shaming anybody. We're not saying that all bodies can't be beautiful and that every size can't fit. What we're saying is, do you honestly feel good there?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, we can help, right? If you don't, that's fine. But if you don't want help, we don't have to talk about it, right?
Yep. I totally agree. I feel like people take the, body positivity to the extreme of where people are just allowing that to be accept something that they don't really feel good in, but yet there's this huge like movement towards everybody needs to accept themselves as they currently are. And I'm a firm believer that there's nothing wrong about having things about your body that you don't love to allow to motivate you. I think we all have that, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. And I feel like, and again, I might get some backlash for this, but I do feel like it's been taken to this extreme that now it's become something that society is just accepting. And when it comes to a place of accepting, and again, there's nothing wrong with loving and appreciating your body for exactly where it's currently at and what it's doing and what it's serving you for. But again, there's nothing wrong with wanting to change your current reality if it's not something you love or you're comfortable with, or it keeps you from showing up as your best self. And there's an area of your confidence that's being suppressed, right? And so being able to actively say and actively work towards a better you, a more confident you, a more thriving you, there's nothing wrong with that. And I truly feel like it is this big movement of, like I said, with the body positivity to almost shame those. It almost flipped from like, quote unquote fat shaming to fit shaming. And I'm like, well, it's the same concept, right? Like of shaming, it's like, but I don't know.
It's
I'm
but
trying
it's
hard to choose my words because I know I'm going to get some backlash here. Like I'm trying to be
it's
very delicate, but
yes, it's really a worthiness issue. So what I will say across the board is that everyone is lovable no matter what size you are.
yep, I totally agree.
That is, I believe, what the body positivity movement is about worthiness and love.
Mhm.
Yes, you are worthy of love. Yes, you are still a good human being. Yes, you still
100%.
have amazing characteristics and amazing things to give this world.
Mhm.
And if somebody comes in my office diagnosed with anorexia, I'm going to help them restore their weight because they're going to feel better, because they're going to function better, because they're going to be able to utilize their gifts better, because they're going to be able to be present. That food noise
Mhm.
is going to go away. The more that we eat, the more that we learn how to identify what's going on that's actually creating the food noise and how to get fulfillment in life outside of restricting or over exercising, that kind of stuff. Why, if I would help someone and the world would support this, why would I help someone restore weight and not on the other side of the fence help someone lose weight
100%.
and
100%.
still be a worthwhile practitioner?
Yep.
Now, again, if you want to stay there and you just want to stop binging, I can help you do that. And we can work on that. And you don't have to lose a single pound. But if you don't like where you're at, if it doesn't feel comfortable, if you're literally choosing clothes to hide your body because you are so self-conscious, then we can work on some things and we can get to a different place. But I refuse to accept, even as someone who treats eating disorders, that there's something wrong with me saying I'm going to help you get to a different spot, no matter what size you come into my office. Because ultimately, it's about food noise. Ultimately, it's about our ability to feel good in our skin. Do you have to be at some, I don't know, set ideal body weight for you to feel good about yourself? No, you just need to feel good about the place that you're in and about how you're engaged with your body and what it is that you can do with your body. I don't care what that number is. The number isn't the magic. What the magic is being able to eat food, make the food noise go away, make the
Mhm.
idea of this like obsessive compulsive exercising life sucks because I can't eat the foods that I enjoy kind of thing, and free you up to a place that you can eat what you want and you know how to eat and the food always goes, oh man, that sounds like freedom to me.
Freedom. It's life-changing. It's completely life-changing, and that's the number one thing we hear with babes on our team. It's like, "This has been life-changing, and the amount of women you've given me my life back. You've saved my marriage." Like, I don't these things, why they feel so simple, like, "Oh, I just don't think about food as much." I mean, think about being able to not just not allow that food noise to consume you, but to be able to go out and have date night with your husband without guilt or shame, right? To be able to go out and have girls' nights out, be able to do those things and enjoy them as you should, instead of this like anxiety and animosity and fear that's, oh, well, I did this and now I've got to punish myself tomorrow and I don't get to eat as much and I have to go run off all these calories and, all of these things that we think we have to do to see success. And this, again, this identity that foods, or the identity we give that food's the enemy and that we can't enjoy these things. And, it's just, the amount of freedom that comes with you being in power and truly in the driver's seat it's liberating. It's absolutely liberating. I know for me personally, though, I wasn't able to truly make identity shifts for myself until, like I said, I really figured out who I was. And that's why I brought this up, because I feel like there's a lot of power here, and maybe challenging our listeners to, once they're done listening to this podcast, to be able to like sit down, give yourself 30 minutes and who are you? Like, and I'd be curious, like how many people can honestly answer that question outside of the titles. Cause like I said, for me, it took days for me to figure that out. And I was like kicking myself in the ass. I'm like, why is this so freaking hard? Why is this so challenging? But when I stripped away all of the titles, I was almost just at loss. And so I encourage, like, and for these identity shifts to really happen, you truly need to figure out who you are first. And then it is about cultivating values that are in alignment with that, I truly believe. But I would be curious to hear your thoughts here.
Can you repeat that question one more time? I want to
Like,
see if I
so when we're talking about giving our listeners something like actionable takeaway to be able to, like, okay, great guys, you talk about identity shifts that need to happen. How do I necessarily do that? Because I feel like people get caught in the mud here and they just get so overwhelmed. Like, it's easy to talk about. I understand it's not necessarily easy to execute,
yeah,
right? And so
yeah.
it sounds great in theory, but when it comes to putting it into practice, that's a completely different story. And so for me, I know that the legit identity shifts didn't happen until I really figured out who I was, outside of, like, when I say stripping away those titles. And it took me some time to work through who I really was and to own those things. And when I started owning those things and showing up as that person, opposed to allowing all the other things of the titles and the superficial to kind of dictate how I was showing up, and I started showing up as the person that I knew I was, you know what I mean? I'm tenacious and I'm passionate and I'm caring and I'm giving. And like I said, I'm slightly stubborn. It's the Taurus in me, but I started showing up in that light. That's when virality happened for me. That's when, people were starting that polarizing, like people are attracted because I was just showing up authentically as myself, not trying to show up as the titles that I'd given myself or what everybody else thought I was or what I thought everyone else thought I should be showing up as. So I guess just something actionable from them to take away from this would be my question of, would you like recommend the same thing, them getting really crystal clear on who they truly are outside of the titles?
Yes. So one thing that I love doing with people, and I work on this repeatedly when I'm doing therapy with people. And one thing that I love doing is what I like to refer to as an internal reflection. In other words, I ask them to identify at least three things that they were proud of that they did either that day or during the week. And the three things that you're proud of can't necessarily be, I got an A+ on this or I did this perfect. That is a very achievement oriented perfectionism that a lot of us have, especially those of us that are very achievement oriented. We're not looking for perfection. What we're looking for is hard. So when I have somebody that, when they look at their week of food and they're like, well, I suck because I didn't do this on this day and I didn't do this on this day and I didn't get my steps done here and I went over here and I'm like, yeah, but what did you do that was different this week? What did you do that was hard? And so they said, well, what was hard was I got an extra serving of chicken at dinner instead of an extra serving of dessert, or I said no to chips after dinner, or I said no to 2 scoops of ice cream and only had one. Okay, that's hard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't perfect. That's hard,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm showing up, and what does that say about you as a human being that you made that choice? This is a character driven conversation now, right? It says I can do hard things. It says things like I'm resilient or I'm strong. Or I'm brave in doing something that's different. And then also at the same time, we have to say, what is it that I would like to improve upon? What is it that I would like to work on next week? And that's where we'll say, oh, that other day I chose 3 scoops of ice cream instead of just one.
Yep.
Or I didn't choose the extra protein. I just went ahead and had dessert. Okay, we all have days like that, right? But having to do both of those, but really focusing on the positive and then what character drives it. The other way that I like to address this is, where is it that your heart? I said this earlier. I see a lot of movement with people in therapy when we can do this. And sometimes for those of us that are very perfectionistic, for those of you that haven't heard me speak before, perfectionism is 100% about shame. It's not actually adaptive at all, but it feels really good and it looks really good on the outside, and employers really love it.
Yeah.
But for those of us that are highly perfectionistic, we are driven a lot by percentage, like 100%, and doing things that are spot on. And that's where it's really hard for us to identify where our heart is, because we're working so hard all the time trying to make sure that everything's perfect. But learning how to identify, what was it that my heart wanted for this person? What is it that I wanted when I showed up today to try to do my meal plan? Right. So I did all the right things. And then in the evening, things got a little haywire, but my heart was in the right place. So what does that say about me as a human being, that I tried really hard, or that I showed up with this gift that didn't go over well at a birthday party? Right. So learning how to identify where our heart is actually where we're going to get some of those more robust character assignments. It means, and sometimes we'll identify things like people are brave, or they're resilient, or they're kind, or they're very compassionate. And I hear again a lot of these highly perfectionistic people go, well, isn't everybody like that? No, everybody isn't like that. And I'm not saying that there aren't other people on the planet that aren't compassionate or kind or brave or resilient, but you are something really special. And you being able to give that from your heart is actually who you are as a human being.
I love that. I love that. I think that's a really solid note to wrap up on. I do think that this is such a powerful topic. And if you guys can't tell, something that both of us are so passionate about, and this really comes in all areas of life. I know we really attached it to your health and fitness journey, but this is just personal, professional, spiritual, financial, whatever goals that you have. I mean, it's truly going to be, your success is going to be governed by the identity of which you've given yourself. It really, really is. And again, understanding that these things are great to talk about. They sound super easy. We understand they're not so easy to execute. So it's going to take a lot of mindful awareness around this. It's a lot of therapy for me, like a lot of therapy for me to really work through and be able, someone to point it out too, because things that were happening, like, when you're so caught in the middle that you can't see, and then you take someone like that pulls it out from that 10,000 foot view, and it has that very neutral opinion, and you're like, holy crap, you're right. Like, I am causing chaos and drama. I am doing these things without even realizing, subconsciously, acting in a way that's not in alignment, even though I think I am in alignment. So there does become a lot of awareness around this. But I do think when you start to become more mindfully aware, you start to catch yourself in certain situations. And you know what I mean? I honestly can catch myself doing things that old Nicole would do. And I can't always say that in that moment I act upon what new Nicole would do, but I'm very aware of it. Right. And so then it can be like the next time, like you said, oh, I had 2 scoops of ice cream this week instead of, like, whatever the case may be. I'm very hyper aware of it, and awareness creates so much opportunity. And so any final thoughts, Anne?
Yes, awareness without judgment creates opportunity for growth.
Even,
The
yeah.
second we judge ourselves or put ourselves down for it, or that's usually when most of us will spiral into hopelessness. I'm always going to be this way. I just suck at this. I can't do this. That judgment piece versus really, really want our listeners to work on curiosity. What happened that was hard for me this evening?
Ooh, curiosity is a really good word. I like that. Yeah. All right, you
Yeah.
guys. Well, I think this is a great place to wrap up on. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next time. Ciao.
If this is helpful, give me a like, follow me, or subscribe for more.